Hey everyone, this is Dave Cohen on Guitar Tales. We have a very special guest this week, Joel Hoekstra. We will get into all the details because this is one of the most accomplished guests we've had on the show so far. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I printed up your Wikipedia page, 16 pages, 16
Uh,
pages of you.
I haven't been on there in a while, so I'm not exactly sure what's on there these days. I should probably make sure it's all like somewhat factual.
Oh, I went in there and put all sorts of bad stuff in there today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got all kinds of like my story's been completely rewritten.
Oh yeah, I did it today. Um, but you know what's kind of cool? I was just kind of lounging around. I'm a lawyer by day, and I do this at night for fun. So I always like to get out of the mood of being a lawyer and into the mood of being a human being. And so I'm just relaxing, playing on social media, and what comes on my feed but Cher. And it was a live performance of hers. I wasn't able to tell. It was one of those like 25-second things. And I'm thinking, I'm about to chat with the guy who was playing guitar on that, most likely. If it's within the last few years, that would have been you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the I guess 17 through 19 really, you know. So yeah.
That was a little, in a good way, a little freaky that I'm listening to really good guitar work and I thought, I'm about to chat with this guy. So it was kind of neat. It just randomly showed up on my social media feed. But it was very,
Randomly.
yeah, right. Yeah, we don't believe that, do we? I,
Well, I mean, no, I would think there probably some kind of algorithm for that. You and I are emailing or something.
yeah,
Or
you're right. You're right. I'm on the Wikipedia page, playing with your profile and things like that, messing up your.
definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
you're
Yeah.
right. There is no random anymore, is there?
No, not anymore.
Yeah.
Not after the last year and a half where we all sat on our devices 24/7.
Yeah, it's crazy. It really is. And if you Google something, then you get an ad from Amazon for the same product, and it's all sorts of craziness right now. Before this went crazy, though, I remember I was in the market for a used car, and I was looking for Fords, which I eventually found, but I found one at a Land Rover dealership. I drove there on a Sunday night. It was closed. And I just drove and got out of my car and looked. That's all I did because there were a couple of used Fords on the lot. Within 3 days, I had a hard copy Land Rover, like quarter-inch thick magazine. And like, shit, that was a little freaky. And that was before these algorithms. This is probably about 5 years ago. And that was just a little unsettling. Like their security camera picked up on me. I don't know what it was, but there it was. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
So for folks who don't know you, I want to just give a little bit, and I want to get most of it from you. You are an on-demand, amazing player. I went all over YouTube watching you, but you tour with some really amazing acts in addition to the creative endeavors you engage in on your own. What are some of the bands you have toured with and do tour with?
I mean, the most recent times, I'd say I'm right now I'm with Whitesnake and Siberian Orchestra. Those are my gigs, my main gigs, and I do several projects and stuff like that right now as well. But also known for, I guess, leading up to Whitesnake, I was a night ranger for 7 years. I was part of the Broadway show Rock of Ages for 6 years.
And in the movie, right?
So yeah, I have a little cameo in the movie, but mainly the over 6 years on playing that on Broadway. Those are all the kind of things that people know me for, and share the share gig you mentioned. There's like there's all kinds of other subplots and stuff like that going on in other parts of the story, but those are kind of the last 10 years or so.
It's so impressive, and one of the things I like is that you have real bona fides in your youth in terms of classical music, right? You're classically trained in your early days before you saw Angus play, right?
Yeah, well, other instruments when I was a kid. My parents had me play classical music when I was a kid on cello and piano, and they were both classical musicians. And so, yeah, in a way, but it makes it sound like I was great, and I wasn't great. I was
Okay,
terrible.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
like, I just wanted to do like other stuff. When I was a little boy, I was like, I just want to play baseball and get me out of here. And, but then guitar, you know, I mean, I was young when I started guitar. I was 11, but it definitely helped jumpstart me, like to, you know, being able to play guitar when that was the third instrument I'd played. So it was like, by the time I started that, it definitely helped move things along a little bit. And then with guitar, I did study classical guitar too. So there was a few years there where I did much more of that than I did like play electric. So
Gotcha. Now,
yeah.
did there come a time when you, if you were to put humility aside, where you started to get the sense, hey, I think I'm really good, or I think I can be really good? You know,
That's like definitely attached to youth, you know. It's like the older I get, the worse I realize I am. But like when you're young, you know, you're super cocky and think you're great, even when you're
right,
terrible. When you really, in actuality, are like awful, you know. So
right,
yeah, I'd say that's the way that's worked for me. It's like, you know, I'm operating on a curve where the older older I get, the ego
right.
continues to go down.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You know, the more ignorant we are, the less ignorant we realize we are. It,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you know, especially with something like music that's so infinite, you know. I mean, there's really no end to where you can go with it or how good you can get with it, and so many great players out there. And nowadays, with everything we were talking about earlier in the lesson, I guess the positive side is you can access great talents from all over the world, like,
right.
you know, the click of a computer or whatever, you know, or your phone. And when I was a kid, you were basically just kind of comparing yourself to the people in your neighborhood or that went to your
That's true.
school. That was kind of all we had. So, you know, I guess that's great for keeping you humble too, man. You surf around Instagram for about 15 minutes, you realize,
Oh,
like,
it's
man,
insane.
I better practice a little bit.
I know there's some people doing ridiculous stuff. There's some kid who's playing an acoustic guitar. And he has this sort of flamboyant style where he's sort of slapping, not slap bass kind of thing, but everything is very dramatic.
Yeah,
But
percussive on the instrument and
yeah,
percussive on the yeah. There's a lot of amazing performances like that worked out. Those one man, you know, it's like
yeah,
solo guitar versions of things these days that you see online that are just kind of like, you know,
I know it's
that
crazy.
explodes. I mean, I grew up with a little bit of that happening and messed around with a little bit of that here and there, but for the most part, I've definitely been somebody who's been in bands and been a part of. You know, it's everybody's got their own journey to take with these things, you know. And for me, it's been about not letting the window shut on being able to make a living doing it.
Right.
Has always been the main focus of it, and that's and then just from there, like pushing it as far as it'll go. Really, I mean, it's just kind of one of those things where when it does work out, and you realize like, oh, I'm actually going to be able to do this with my life. Then, I mean, that was always the fear. It was like it took me a really long time to have things work out to the point where I felt like I'm going to be, yeah, I'm going to be
Right.
okay. This is what I'm going to do.
It is your day
Um,
job.
Right. I wasn't gonna have to go do something else. That was that was
Yeah,
always
yeah.
kind of my definition of success would be able to like get through my life just being able to do this and not have to like go like wait tables or something. Not that there's
Right.
anything wrong with that, as they would say on Seinfeld.
Right.
But you know, I mean, it's that's always just kind of been my focus. I've been a real kind of like working class guitar player, man. You know, just kind of with when I was in my 20s, there's a lot of teaching. I had 70 students a week and took what gigs I had in the Chicago suburbs where I was living at that time, and
Right.
but always like working really hard, you know. And then when I came to New York to do this theater show called Love Janis about Janis Joplin, that's why I came out here.
Okay.
That was my first time of only performing and not teaching to supplement, or vice versa. Because really, it was always kind of teaching and then using performing to supplement that. It was
And
pretty much the focus, you know.
did
And
teaching
then
help your craft?
what's that?
Did teaching help your craft, do you think?
Yeah, because it kept me on it. I mean, when you teach, you play guitar 5, 6 hours a day. There might be some of it that's a little bit better for you than others, but the bottom line is you're still playing guitar 5, 6 hours a day. That's better. For me, there was like those two approaches. Like you can make your living with your guitar and try and get there, or you can hold down a day job and try to get somewhere big with it. You know, make the business connections to.
Yeah.
There was always those two approaches, and I always went with the make a living with the guitar thing. That was always more my goal than the I watched a lot of friends who would get the day job and they'd say, no, 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 this is just to support me as a guitar player while I'm doing this. And then you just watch the day job completely consume their life and they
Right,
barely
right,
play
right.
their guitar. And so for me, it was always smarter just to make guitar my thing and just like, we'll take it as far as it'll go. And as it turned out, I can't really complain, you know.
It seems like, you've kept yourself busy. And the question that's running through my head is, was it like something like stopped on a dime and turned where suddenly you became in demand, or was it sort of a slow thing?
Slow, totally slow. Yeah, like that's like to the point where you barely notice. It's just like
Okay.
each individual gig that you get, you feel like you're taking a step. But there was never, you know, some, well, you can look at it a bunch of ways. You can look at it as a bunch of big breaks, or you can look at it as a bunch of smaller breaks, you
Right,
know.
right, right.
But yeah, I'd like to say it's just kind of, I mean, the story kind of as it would go would be like that gigging in the Chicago area to getting Love Janis out here, kind of doing some oldies bands like playing in the Turtles and Big Brother and the Holding Company, because their guitar player Sam was the music director of Love Janis, and
Okay.
so I got kind of pulled into doing a little bit of that. And one of my subs on that show played with the Turtles, so I started as a fill-in and I ended up being in there, and then all the while back in Chicago playing with Jim Peterick, who would play his once a year, twice a year events, these world stage events in his house band, and that really led to Night Ranger at the time.
Now tell me, let's slow that one down. So what's the Night Ranger connection? How did that occur?
Yeah, so well, Jim Peterick, who most people would know from the band Survivor,
Right.
also founded the Ides of March. So he wrote a lot of big songs. Just he wrote "Eye of the Tiger" and
Okay.
all those Survivor hits, 38 special hits, those that and so anyway, he'd have these events called World Stage where all those guests would come out and they'd sing a few of their hits. And one of those guests every year was Kelly Kagi, the drummer from Night Ranger. So I was in the house band and would be part of everybody's songs as they would come out. And
Okay.
so even while I was in New York doing Love Janis, Jim would still fly me back, and I would go like pretty much right off the plane right to the venue and go play down like these 30 something songs. And so um, as it worked out, oddly enough, Reb Beach was playing in Night Ranger at the time. So who's now my guitar partner in Whitesnake, right? So
Yeah.
he needed to miss a show. I think he had to play with Winger. And so Night Ranger was either going to cancel this gig, or Kelly said, "Hey, I know this guy that plays with Jim that'll like get off, learn 30 songs and get off the plane and like just play down the gig, and let's get this guy to come in." And so that was basically my audition, was like a gig,
Oh,
basically.
that's great.
Like, we'll meet you at the gig and see how it goes. So yeah, that was my inroads there. So yeah, like I said, it's all kind of watching things kind of move forward through all these things present opportunities. And so yeah, through playing in Jim's world stage thing to Night Ranger, and I would say through doing pit gigs in New York City. I was subbing just as for a friend of mine who was he's more of a traditional like pit musician, right?
Right, right, right,
On
right.
Broadway. And what ended up happening there is the keyboard player from one of those shows became the music supervisor of Rock of Ages. So that's how that happened. So, it's like through doing something that you'd go like, well, why are you even doing that? And then so you get kind of rewarded in the end, and then have 6 years of basically playing steady on a show on Broadway. So that's the story there. And really, the TSO thing kind of came about through, I'd say that's both that stuff combined, because Alex Skolnick needed to take a year off, basically, at the time was the
Okay.
approach. And uh, a couple people in the band said, look, this guy, he's in Night Ranger, he plays with Rock of Ages on Broadway. And, I had an audition. And I think really one of the main things is that we were on America's Got Talent as like a guest at Rock of Ages. And, that clip in particular, I think, kind of helped me. Paul O'Neill, I think, was maybe hesitant on my audition thing because I wasn't doing stage moves or anything. I was just kind
Okay.
of, as odd as it sounds, I do have a hard time doing that without an audience there. It's like somebody pulls out a flip phone at the time, or like
Oh, right, right, right.
camera, and I'm like, I'm not playing with a band. I'm not playing in front of an audience. Like I can't,
Yeah, you have to be
can't.
organic about
I
it.
can't act like I'm playing for an arena right now. I felt silly. So, I think there were some reservations about my stage presence, and then I was on that show, and Paul saw that I could perform as well as play, and so that helped me there. That little clip, but that's kind of how all those things developed, and then the Cher gig was really uh, Whitesnake taking a year off for David to have surgery, have knee surgery, and my friend Justin Derrico recommended me to Cher's guitar player for like a fill-in because I just was like, hey, I texted a bunch of people who I could think of that were like in the scene and just like,
I'm free.
if you hear anything, I
Yeah,
got
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
an empty year. I'm looking to just build a year. That ended up being a really fun year. I mean, it was really interesting to kind of build a year from like, I had TSO kind of November, December, but you're looking at like 10 months of like, man, I
Right.
can't stay around for 10 months. So I had
Yeah.
a lot of fun. I did a lot of really like random things that year and built a lot of cool stuff. And it was a good challenge to do that. And one of the things was the Cher thing. And that was supposed to be just like a few gigs and ended up really turning into a few years. So,
You did the residency with her too, right?
yeah, I mean, the residency is always divided up into these like 3 week periods, basically,
Right.
2, 3 week periods. So, yeah, basically my time there was a lot of the Vegas stuff and then some of the touring, like a couple of the runs of actually taking it out because that Mamma Mia 2 or one of
Yeah.
the Mamma Mia movies came out. So she, oddly enough,
Oh, that's right. I
went
forgot.
for that "Here We Go Again" tour, right? So which I
Yeah.
thought, man, this is too weird, you know. When you got "Here I Go Again" with Whitesnake, and now I'm on the "Here We Go Again" tour with Cher.
Right,
And
that's right. And
um,
what was it like being in sort of different genres like that? Does it matter one way or the other? Is it easy for you to slide from rock to something much
well, that was one of the cool things about the Cher gig for me at the time, because I grew up learning how to play a bunch of different stuff, taking like every gig there was basically, and
right,
so
right,
I've done a lot of different styles. And so lately, obviously, all the stuff that took off was like this my initial love, like the hard rock stuff, right?
right.
So, which is great because that's what I probably prefer the most, honestly. Like it's what I grew up on. But at the same time, there's times where it's like, hey, it'd be nice, it was fun to play some different styles and not have people like judge you and stuff like that, right? It was like
Yeah,
appropriate for the
yeah.
gig. It's like fun to get back into like playing disco for like a song with her and stuff like that.
And I would think
That's-
percussively, it's probably going to stretch your muscles a little bit, right? That's a slightly.
I mean, it's a fun guitar gig to play because the material spans like 4 generations. It's
Oh,
not
that's
like
true.
it doesn't all sound the same. It's like real stretched out. So there's a lot of different styles in there. Technically not nearly as demanding as like Whitesnake or TSO, but in terms of being able to cop the feel of each of the songs and then be able to like perform when you step out. It's a different. That gig is different in that you're in the back on a bandstand for the gig, and then you basically step out those like 2 moments or 3 moments, and it's either just you or it's like you and Cher. So it's
Okay.
like, okay, this has got to be like, those moments kind of like define how good the gig was.
Right.
By the end of the gig, it was like, how did the moment go when I was out with her? Because the rest of it, you
How
know.
would that feel being with someone that intergenerationally iconic? Were you nervous at all? Like the first few times when you would be just you and her on the stage or in the front stage?
Yeah, I mean, I would say not like not nervous, but like aware because she never rarely she would rarely like repeat the same stage moves in those moments. So I definitely didn't want to become known as the guitar player who knocked over Cher accidentally on stage.
That would be problematic.
Yeah, on like TMZ or something like
Yeah,
that. Right?
right,
So
right.
I definitely grew like a third eye out, or third and fourth eyes out of the side of my head, making sure
Yeah.
like stay out of her way. Because I mean, so if the stage is empty like that, it was the idea would be the concept for me at least was always to you learn how to fill a stage, right? So if she was moving stage left, I'd move stage right.
Okay. Right,
And
right.
sometimes along the way, you'd have to kind of like make eye contact because sometimes she'd want to interact for a second and then
Okay.
sometimes pass you, or maybe longer than a second. You never knew, and that was the thing. So sometimes she'd stop, and it would be like, "Oh my God, she got her elbow on my shoulder while she's singing," and it's like,
Okay. Yeah.
so it was always a little different in terms of what to expect from her, and I liked that. So it was never scripted. It never came off as this moment like, oh, I know what we're going to do here. It was always you always had to read what she was going to do a bit.
That did you ever develop like a friendship with her outside of those shows, or was it more
Oh, not really. I mean, she's like, just top pro, I mean, everything was just very professional and great band. And the friendship is more with those people that, were in the band and the dancers
right,
and
right, right.
the touring personnel. And then, I mean, Cher's totally, very nice and everything, but it wasn't like, I was going to call her up and be like, hey, you want to get coffee? Or, I mean, it's
Right.
like, she did some real fun stuff with us though. Like she took us all to the movies and stuff like that,
Well, that's great.
but it's like, you're traveling with a large group of
Probably
people,
50, 60 people at least, right?
something like, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you with crew and everything like that. But it was, she's real great, man. Super fun, like fun stuff like that. Bingo night,
Oh,
stuff
really?
like
That's
that.
pretty cool. Now let me ask you this. Another thought I had. So I have this vision of you hopping off the plane, right? And when you were doing, what was the name of the show when you would do the not bands? Was it Bandstand in Chicago?
World stage.
World Stage, World Stage.
Yeah.
So if you're playing 30-ish different songs, and presumably a lot of the guitar work would be from wildly divergent guitar players, what kind of pressures would you have to emulate their tone? How would you deal with the equipment end of things to at least try to replicate the sound for each of those bands?
On that, I mean, it was easier for me because Jim's main guy was really always my friend Mike Aquino, who's, great guitarist. And so Mike would always, help me out because if I only had time to get down
Right.
on 7 or 8 of the solos or something, I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
Mike had it all covered. So we would just kind of talk and be like, look, how do you want to do this? And I was always more than happy to give him the bulk of stuff as long as I could like stay in the camp. That's always been the way I am as a guitar partner, period.
Right.
Like, dude, whatever you want, grab whatever you need, and then, I'll do the rest. And, um, so that anyway, I mean, I did enough of the Night Ranger stuff that it gave me my opportunity with Night Ranger. So, and I mainly just wanted to stay a part of it. And those guys are my friends, and Jim is my friend, and just wanted to be a part of like the gig.
Right. And then in addition to the gigging, you got to cut albums with a lot of these folks, right? Like it wouldn't just be live. It looks like you would record albums with some of the bands you were with.
Um, well, I mean, like some of them, I mean, like if you're reading off my bio and
Yeah,
stuff like
I'm just
that,
feeding off of this. Yeah.
so the bio is like I tried to put up front like the people I spent the most time with, but then there's also like on there people that I've just like played a couple songs with on stage or something like that, or I'm on like a recording with, or
Right.
so there's some names like that on there too, which I don't know. I look at it like life had brought me to those moments, so sure,
Yeah.
why not throw it on there? It's nice to have it all on there in a weird way, just to be able to be like,
No,
yeah, this
it's
all
great.
happened.
I mean, I look at this thing and you're so in demand. And here's a question I've asked a lot of folks on our show, and I probably know the answer ahead of time. But for someone who is as in demand as you are, you have to have the technical skills to be able to pull it off. But a lot of folks talk about the ability to just interact nicely with people and be a decent man or woman, in this case, a guy. Where do you place sort of human compatibility versus musical ability? Because something's making your phone ring all the time. And obviously you're really good on guitar. I've watched you. But where do you
Um, Ah, man, I don't know. I couldn't tell you, man. I mean, it's really hard to say. I think you just do your best at every turn, right? I mean, it's like nobody bats 1,000. That's important to remember.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
very hard to be like always like every single interaction with every single human being like it goes well or whatever. So, I think you just do your best at every turn and just hope that that keeps happening. So, I don't know. I've credited desperation a lot in my life, where I've said like I needed it to work out because I really didn't have any backup plans or anything that was like, well, if that doesn't work out, I'll just go do this because I was like, I'm totally screwed if this doesn't work out. I got
Yeah.
nothing else.
Yeah. But you put your eggs in that basket and it's at least played out pretty nicely for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've made it this far, man, and
Yeah.
the world is like I mean, 2020 was another one of those years where I talk about the challenge, like 2017 was like that when David got surgery and I was like, oh, now I got to build a year without Whitesnake. That's my,
Yeah.
10 month of the year band. So, geez. Now 2020 was like, you got to build a year without being able to leave your place. Have fun with that.
What did
So,
you do?
well, I finished recording my album from my side project, Joel Hoekstra's 13. So that was definitely huge to get that done. And then I'd say from there, realistically, it was a lot of teaching. So I went back to that for the first time in like 20 years,
Okay.
which was nuts, on like virtual, doing like 30 students a week. And then I was doing cameos. I did like quarantine, a lot of those collab videos to stay
Yep.
like kind of out there in the digital world. A lot of that stuff, which was fun. I got to play with a lot of people who'd kind of been on that list of like never worked with, but someday, Nico McBrain and Billy Sheehan, Arnel Pineda from Journey. Um, who am I missing on this list? Dino Jalusic. I'd always wanted to do stuff with him, and so like a lot of these people, Mike Portnoy. So it's got to work with all these guys during that time, and then the Cameo thing. Did a lot of playing guitar for people on Cameo, and
That's good
um,
stuff. Yeah.
so I stayed really super super slammed busy, and lots of sessions too. Lots of people hiring me to play on like a solo on their album or whatever on a song, and um, or play on one track, and so lots of that. Like right now, I have four. I'm probably going to do that when we're done tonight. Like I've got like four songs waiting from people. I still get hired all the time to do that. People just hire me to play on a track or whatever. Um, and today is not a teaching day, but I just got done with the 5 days in a row of that. And so I'm keeping it for now. I taught every off day of the TSO tour. I just finished the TSO tour, and
Okay.
there's typically 2 days off a week, and I filled them with teaching. It was like we couldn't really go out because of the COVID scene.
Yeah.
So I was like, as long as I'm sitting in my hotel room, I might as well I'm going to be playing my guitar anyway. So I might
Right.
as well teach and do this. So yeah. Anyway, that's kind of been that's been a big part of things, but I'd like to think I kicked its butt, man. 2020 was like I made more money that doing that than I probably did being out on the road the previous year.
Well, I think we started these shows, like we weren't doing Zoom. We were just in the studio. And
Yeah,
then this whole, we call it our fireside chat because we did one in front of my fireplace. But COVID forced us all, I think, to be a little resourceful and really tap into our creativity. And I think we had to work really hard to keep that work ethic going really in a situation that begs us to be couch potatoes, you know?
yeah. Well, I think once I wrapped my head around the fact that it was going to be a long wait,
Yeah.
that's when I really went like, okay, not gonna like I'm not just going to sit around and like wait for touring to happen again. So it's
Right.
time to be like busy and put myself to work one way or another. I mean, at the end of the day, that is just one part of like what being a musician's about. It's not, it's doesn't like totally make up the entire picture, right? Can't think of
Yeah.
I'm not coming up with the correct term there,
No,
um,
look at
but
the,
yeah, I think to record is a huge part of it,
yeah.
and pushing us into doing all these little things. I think it was good for me. It made me definitely more active in the session thing than I had been. I'd been a little like lazier on that because I'd always be touring or have a tour coming up and just say I'm kind of too busy right now. And certainly cameos and lessons. I really wasn't doing much of that at all. Like just a very little bit. And now I kind of see like, hey, that's still a very valuable thing to be able to do because I did it for so long that I'm still like, you know, I guess pretty good at teaching. I'm able to still actually articulate my thoughts and because I had 10 years or so of doing that 70 students a week, right?
It's a lot. That's a real lot. And
That's a lot. Yeah.
and the cool thing is, like when you're playing out, you're making people happy, you're spreading joy by, giving them music. But when you're teaching, that's a whole different level because, you're setting up a whole army of musicians to make other people happy and themselves happy with music. You know, you think
Yeah,
of
well,
it,
you're helping other people kind of realize a lot of what their dreams are with music, which
right?
is fun, you
Yeah,
know, and cool. And everybody's got different ambitions. You know, my thing is I always preach what worked for me, and that's the consistency. You know, when you
mhm,
play guitar, I always tell people the number one thing is that to try and play your guitar every day while you're taking lessons from me. Try to play your guitar every day, and that's harder than it sounds because people might be like, "You mean I could just pick it up and play for 2 minutes?" Yeah,
right, right.
but the thing is that if you do that, if you do play every day, I've never known anybody that played every day that wasn't good
Yeah,
ever. So I mean, it's like just do that. And I'm like, there's gonna be times where you're gonna look at it and be like, no way, I just worked
right,
12 hours. I just had the worst day ever.
right.
I'm like,
Or I don't like what's coming out of my own hands right now.
if you
Right.
can go over to your guitar and pick it up for 2 minutes, then you're still going to be the person that wins the battle. So you just got to be the person that keeps picking it up no matter what.
Yeah.
So
And
people get themselves they set themselves up with unrealistic expectations. I think
mhm,
because the bottom line is the window probably shut on a lot of them if they're adults to be able to become a professional. Um, and so it's a different thing than I was. For me, I was trying to scoot through before the window shut, right?
right, right,
And
right.
kind of got through. Now they're sort of like just trying to find a way to make it a good hobby. So if there's somebody who's saying to themselves, I'm going to still work this long job and have my family and I'll practice 3 hours a day while I'm taking lessons from this guy. That might not work out for them, Like, I mean, they might find out after 2 days or 3 days that that's burnout level, and then they go,
Yep.
all right. So that's why I just tell people like, look, just make it every day, and it'll fit into your life. You just got to make it part of your life. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of folks who picked it up in their 40s and even 50, and they've stuck with it.
It's still a great. Bottom line is, it's still a great hobby. It's like it
Yeah.
doesn't. Playing guitar doesn't have to be on a professional level, and you don't even have to Um, you don't even have to be a pro to be good. I mean, there's a lot of great amateur players out there too.
They
Like
really are.
still achieve like greatness and still work some other gig. It's
Yeah.
like that's fine.
I have a buddy of mine in high school. We were talking before the show started. I went to the same school as Steve Conti, but one of my other friends, what day one, he had never touched a guitar. Day 365, he was playing Mood for a Day on a guitar he built himself with his own hands.
Wow,
And
cool.
he's an engineer lawyer now. Like he doesn't do it for a living,
Yeah,
but just that sort of level of skill and devotion and technical expertise and all that. And he just stuck with it all these years, and he's still a great guitar player, but I don't think he's ever had a gig. He just does it for himself, but he gets joy out of it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, bottom line is, it's still a great hobby. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
like somebody's living all the time. To be worthwhile like pursuing. So anyway, that's kind of a lot of the teaching mindset is having to think about that, like where it is for most people. Now, some of my students are younger and they might still have the potential to be like professional guitar players too if they want to do that.
Right.
That's a pretty brutal thing these days, though, man.
It's a whole different
The,
world now, right?
the money is very fleeting.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make money like playing live or recording. So like, how do you do it?
The recording is really hard now, I would think, if you're a new one, because
The streaming thing is just brutal. Yeah.
yeah, I know it's crazy. So what do you have next on your horizon for 2022?
So let me pull up my calendar because I should actually probably be like accurate when I tell you. Like,
There we go.
so I'm doing some dates like coming up right now with Broadway's Rock of Ages band, right? So that's really just like, for me, that's just going back out the band from the show. We just play the full length versions of the cover songs, right? So it's like I get to do a cover gig kind of vibe with my friends who I did the gig with.
That sounds
So
cool.
anyway, I got one of those coming up in Jersey, a private event in New York City. I'm doing the Monsters of Rock cruise in February. I've done that for years now. That's kind of like one of my annual
That sounds
go
like
back
fun.
and do it. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I play a set on there, an acoustic set that's called the Hangover Jam, and I give away free Bloody Marys to everybody that comes, and
Oh,
give
that's
away
great.
give away merch and just it's a blast. And then we play basketball against the cruisers and stuff too. That's one of my other little things on there. I'm doing a couple rock and roll fantasy camps coming up. Let's see, one in LA, February 17 through 20, and one, it's a ways off, March 31 to April 3. Shooting videos for a project that I have coming out with Michael Swede, Nathan James, Tommy Aldridge, and Marco Mendoza. So that album, I'm not sure the release date on that, but that should be, fairly soon. Doing some acoustic gigs with my friend Brandon Gibbs in March. And then really, so that's kind of like a lot of the front end of the year. And then Whitesnake is scheduled to really start the UK run in May. So, and then we go UK into Europe, and there's more dates that are going to get announced, and so people can look, keep an eye out for that stuff, and then head to TSO come November, December. So really, as soon as I hit May, I'm pretty much looking at Whitesnake into TSO.
Right. So you have a very full dance card for 2022.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I'm teaching 30 students a week and doing sessions and stuff and cameos. So like all that stuff kind of like still lives on. Just you never know what COVID is going to do to all this stuff, right? So I mean, it's kind of like I'm assuming that we're going to just kind of keep things open though, and it seems like no matter what, we're going to keep like trying to plug forward through it at this moment. So
I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm feeling like it's going to get into a milder phase, and that's what I'm reading about too. So for all our sake, I hope that's our future.
hopefully, yeah, you never know these days, man.
Yeah.
Like, I just got to take it as it comes. But that's why I don't like I just continue to do everything because it's like you don't know where what kind of turn this is going to take right now.
But we do know that music will always be there, so that's perfect. It's what form,
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's for me, it's to continue working at it and never stop doing that. I mean, as close as I came was the top of 2020, just because 2019 had been so brutal with travel. I was on the road 285 days out of that year,
Oh
out
wow.
of 365. So when it hit the beginning of it, I was like, hey, this is like a godsend. I can just be at home for like a month or two in a row and not constantly
Little
leaving.
do you know.
Yeah, little did I know.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then when I was at home for like a year and a half, I was like, yeah, maybe this is a bit much. But
Right.
yeah. Anyway, which I was, actually more than happy to lay low and kind of wait until real stuff got going. I wasn't the guy banging like at the first gig to be available. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm fine until Whitesnake and TSO. Definitely missed doing that stuff.
Well, that's good stuff. Now, let me ask you, how can people find your stuff, so to speak? Just look it up by your name, website,
Yeah, I
social.
do all the social media stuff except TikTok. I can't bring myself to do that. I'm
We're
not going
both
to
a
do
little old
it.
for it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I do Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and so people can hit me up there. But I also have a .com still. People can go to my website,
Perfect.
joelhoekstra.com, and link over to any of that stuff from there. And yeah, you can even email me through there if you have contact. So that's how people can get in touch if they want to take lessons and that kind of stuff. So
Well, that's perfect. I got to say, it's been a lot of fun chatting with you tonight.
cool. Yeah, likewise. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll keep our eyes open for you. Have a great night.
Thanks so much. You too.
All right.
Appreciate it.